We're here in Bluffton, South Carolina, interviewing my friend Chip Collins, who leads the #2 team in South Carolina with $181 million in sales in 2023.
Welcome to the Low Country.
My God, the Low Country is so amazing. So we came in last night and went to your amazing 1795 home.
Good memory.
On the waterfront.
On May River, yeah.
It's one of the most beautiful views. We watched the sunset from your fire pit, and one of the most beautiful views I've ever seen. And your house is stunning. Your wife, Carrie, has done a great job with
She's got a knack for that, doesn't she? She
Yeah.
has a certain taste that she's been able to fully achieve in that house. Of all the houses we've kind of moved around from in the area, that's the one that I think is quintessential to her taste. So.
And we then went to a really great restaurant. His home is in Bluffton, which is right across the bridge from Hilton Head.
Yeah.
And downtown, that's an exaggeration. The center district of Bluffton
Yes.
is stunning.
It's referred to as Old Town. The original town of Bluffton was 1 square mile. So most of the original developments and structures were in that space. And it eventually had a main street that people would walk on and horses would travel on and carriages and that sort of thing. Of course, back in 1795, everything was all about the water. Everything came from the waterways. So that was funny because Carrie pointed that out last night. You were saying, well, the front of the house is sort of, it's nice, but it was really the back of the house where you've got the porch and all that sort of thing really opened up and became the surprise. And Carrie said, well, that was the front of the house. And that was an aha for you. You're like, oh, that makes total sense, of course.
And people got around to that house from Savannah by boat. There were no roads.
Correct. Yeah, certainly no bridges that were coming across and that sort of thing. So it was all by water. Yeah, it's a special spot. And Old Town Bluffton was sort of the beginning of this section of the Low Country. That's really where population began. Then in the late 1950s, early 60s, Hilton Head was born, and Hilton Head became the name that I think most people are aware of. And so a lot of times we actually, from a marketing perspective, we struggle a little bit by making sure that we use the word and the phrase Hilton Head, but we don't want to do it to the exclusion of Bluffton or Palmetto Bluff or Sun City or any other market areas that have blossomed over these decades.
So you're handling these different areas. How do you market them? Because Hilton Head and Bluffton and then the surrounding areas aren't going to fall under an umbrella category.
Yeah, well, I think as many locations have had the COVID population boom, we've seen that. So there's a lot of additional development that's occurred in the last 4 years. And as a result, our market area has grown. And a lot of this market area just wasn't, other than Hilton Head, really wasn't heavily developed. So it's tricky because when I said welcome to the Low Country, that really is and has become sort of the nomenclature for us for our market area. And because we're serving Hilton Head proper, Bluffton, which is the mainland, all the way through Beaufort and even up into Charleston, that's all sort of considered the Low Country of South Carolina. So we've got to be careful and strategic about which words we're using in which marketing pieces in terms of trying to attract people, because we may find someone that's particularly drawn or knows Hilton Head and they really don't have any interest in Beaufort or wouldn't even think about Charleston because it's 2.5 hours up the road. So we got to be thoughtful about and strategic about how we're doing that.
That makes sense. The other thing that fascinated me last night is we got to stay in your villa in Sea Pines. Obviously, I had heard of Sea Pines extensively, but I'm not a golfer, so I'd never really spent any time there. It's stunningly beautiful. I mean, it reminded me, in essence, of Sea Ranch out in California, that there's this combination between architecture and a consistent architecture married to really maintaining the natural landscape.
Yeah, it's a marriage of the two, right? That was the thoughtfulness, was let's not just clear out all the trees. let's not put up a bunch of high-rise buildings. Let's have everything sort of integrate together. So even, as you mentioned, like with sea pines in particular, the color scheme with the Architectural Review Board of what's approved for house colors are all natural tones. And it is only through a little bit of time and evolution where those committees have allowed a little bit more tolerance for something that sticks out a little bit. But the joke has always been, are you going to paint your house brown or you're going to paint it tan? Because pretty much everything wants to blend in that way.
It's beautiful. You drive down these long roads of live oaks with the moss hanging down.
Yeah,
You think
Spanish
you're in
moss.
Savannah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyway, so we stayed at his beautiful villa that's on the marina.
Harbortown Marina. Yep.
So nice. It's beautiful. But what I love about what you're doing is instead of Airbnb or renting out the villa, you're using it for your clients and your friends, and even you guys use it every once in a while. Talk to me about that, because I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, one of the nice things about owning property especially on the island, being close to the beach, is that folks vacation here year upon year upon year. So it gives an opportunity for Airbnb, VRBO, and professionally managed properties. Where the villa is located, we certainly could do that, but our choice was, how can we better leverage that piece of real estate meaningfully for the people that are closer to us? It's not about us trying to make a little bit extra jingle. How can we impact, for instance, with team members? So we've offered up for team members to sort of have a staycation there, and they've done that and really enjoyed that, maybe for special occasions. We've had clients that have and will continue to stay there, sometimes in gaps. So maybe we've sold somebody's property and their next property isn't available. During the COVID market with new development, which we saw a lot of new development, their timeline for production kept getting drawn further and further out as supply chain was slowed, et cetera. So we'd have clients that were basically in an RV moving down here and counting on a closing date that was now a month off. Where do they need a place to stay? During the Heritage Golf Tournament in the springtime, which is our PGA tournament, each year we hold about a 4-day long client event, which is just a revolving door cocktail party. It starts about 10 o'clock and rolls until about 5 o'clock, where people can come in and visit us and do that sort of thing. We've got VIPs like you that come in and are able to use it. And we've got VIP buyers that come in and we say,
that's really what impressed me. I would imagine if I was a luxury buyer coming in and you said, don't worry, we'll put you up in our place, they would feel really taken care of.
Yeah, and the agents know that that's available. So they don't overplay that, because we recognize and they recognize, and I have them put a little skin in the game. I say, guys, at least you're going to be paying the cleaning fee for this property. So they're not just whimsically offering up to anybody. There's a little bit of a selection process that happens there. And it's super meaningful to the clients.
It's a very different way of looking at an investment property. And it's one of the things I love about you, Chip, is that you're as much about relationships and finding meaning in life than you are about the bottom dollar. I mean, don't get me wrong, your bottom dollar is doing really, really well.
Sure, but that's not a piece about it. That was really something that when we've lived on the island for 27 years, we moved out to Bluffton, to the house that you visited. We've been out there for about 5.5 years. Hilton Head, over that whole period of time, that's where my heart is. That's where Carrie's heart is. So we always knew we needed to have a piece of real estate on the island. So being able to locate that, find it, secure it, and figure out the best way to leverage it in a more meaningful way, in a more global way, was really, I think, where the rubber meets the road on that one.
So I know you're from Ohio. How did you end up in Hilton Head, and how did you end up in real estate?
Yeah, well, we vacationed here growing up, which is a really common pathway. And I was telling you guys last night that in the late 50s, early 60s, when the first development on the island, when those marketing seeds, they were planted up in Ohio, well, we picked up on some of those over time. And anybody that's from Ohio that may be watching knows that there's a really beaten path between Ohio and Hilton Head. So we followed that path year upon year upon year. And when I graduated from school in Ohio and tried the corporate thing in Washington, D.C., I knew I didn't want to go back to Ohio, which I was joking with Rob about, because he said, I understand. And I didn't want to stay in D.C. And really the only other place that I really knew well was Hilton Head. So I came down here and got into property management, got my license, got my broker's license, and then coming up close to 30 years ago, got into general brokerage.
And when did you open up your own company?
23 years ago.
And when you opened up your own company, you were a full-time salesperson.
Yeah. We had started forming, I had a partner at the time, and we had started forming a small scale team. And you know, you and I go way back. We met during the Star Power days, original Star Power days, and paying attention to what the Crockett team was doing and other organized teams really caught our attention. So we started with some more detailed staff members. We started employing buyer specialist agents. We started to figure out how to do our own marketing versus just counting on the general brokerage where we started handling our marketing. So by the time that we started the firm, we were probably 7 or 8 people strong. And now we're up to about 30.
So I do want to get into where you are now. When did you start realizing that you wanted to transition out of sales yourself? Because now you'll go on listing appointments, but that's pretty much
That's right.
in general.
In the business, I think as the team leader, it's always important to keep your finger on the pulse of what's actually happening on the front line. I think if you back away from that entirely, which is great, but you lose a little bit of that knowledge base that and especially as the market evolves and changes and how the conversations change. So coaching your team is a little bit harder if you're not having some of those conversations yourself. But I realized that, especially as we were in the mode of developing the buyer specialist program, that's just certain personalities just do better with that. And I know we've been talking about the personality types a little bit during your visit, but that's just not that. I realized early on that's not I don't have the patience for that. I don't have that. I love establishing relationships, but I don't love spending that amount of time with people over and over and over. I'd like to, I found that I had a more success rate by taking a more of a structured business approach with the listing side of the business really calls for. What's your marketing plan? When can we expect to hear from you? Who am I going to be encountering with, et cetera? That speaks more to my personality than on the wild search.
Which is interesting because we had Chip take the MBTI this morning, and he tested as an ESTJ, which is pretty close to what we guessed. And the ESTJ is the executor, the person who runs a company really, really well, that puts in the systems, that knows how to sort of be chill and be effective in running a business, which is what you enjoy doing. So that's where your personality fits your style really, really well.
Yeah. And what I really want to do on that, I think, and you study that a lot more than I do, as I shared with you, we keep it simple with the DISC, but really my primary goal, I think, and as you studied that test, a lot of that's pretty down the middle. I was saying to Rob, I really like serving the chameleon role, because when you've got 30 people that you're trying to make happy and keep happy, and every day is a little bit different, having the ability to kind of morph into who they are and have that kind of conversation, but then switch over and change entirely to someone who's a lot more direct, for instance, and isn't having as an emotional day. That's something I sort of pride myself on, being that chameleon. I think it helps in my leadership role.
So other agents out there who are interested in growing their business where they take themselves out of the business, talk to us about some of the important steps that you went through in that process. I know obviously first thing was hiring buyer agents or
Yes.
creating that position. And I believe you've also created positions that other teams have not created.
Well, we've always tried to figure out how to be different. That's one of the things that's always been important to me, is going away from being impacted by and learning lessons from groups like Star Power and your Rev conference, et cetera. But always swimming in a different direction from the local market masses. And as I've evolved the team, I've sort of figured out what are areas where maybe I'm not as strong at. So in the buyer specialist side, I was like, I'm just not as strong at that. I don't have the patience. I don't have that aptitude. I don't have that desire. I don't get a high from that process, but I have an amazing team of buyer's agents that absolutely do. And they're so happy to be filling that pie piece in our organization. And for what it's worth, that's all they want to do. They also don't want to do the other admin pieces.
How do you determine that they're going to be good in that role?
A little bit of personality testing, a little bit of conversation testing. All the hiring that we've ever done has been based on committee. So it's never just my singular outlook on it. We've learned through the years to have longer conversations, explore it, study what their background is. And we've increasingly, I think, found, we all learn, sometimes you make mistakes and sometimes you hit home runs right out of the gate, is that a sales background is important of some nature, but a lot of times it's not necessarily a real estate sales background that we're looking for.
It might be somebody at the department store that's just hitting a home run every time.
100%, because those are the skills that, the relatability skills, the engagement skills, the desire to be competitive, to achieve a certain goal, those things you really can't train up on. And so that's typically what we've looked for. And what's been really rewarding, and I know you and I were talking about this before, is that a lot of those instances, and we've got really long retention with our agents, that career change was life-changing for them.
So it's interesting. I believe that when you're in a team or a company that has long-term retention, it's about what's going on at the top of the team filtering down. And if you have a team that's not able to keep people long-term, there's something wrong with your culture, or you have the wrong people on your team.
Right. Or you're not generous, or you're not thoughtful, you're not caring, you're not available, you're not a problem solver as a team leader. Most of that's coming from the top, and that's typically where the problem is. And maybe you're just not getting the right people on the team to pair with how you want your team to operate. And we've always said, that this team isn't for everybody and everybody isn't for this team. But when the match is there, and we tend to grow by attraction as opposed to recruiting, when the match is there, it's a really good match. Some of it's culture, and some of it is operational, as I mentioned.
So what type of individual is the Chip Collins team attracting?
Well, we're looking for people with big hearts. We're looking for people that lead with their personality, that they're doing this because they want to impact people. They believe that real estate is more about a transition than a transaction. It's more about putting the service first and understanding that the dollars will follow later. And a big core component for just who we are is it's about community and community service. So there's a lot of community service extracurricular activity that we do that really has nothing to do with our day-to-day selling real estate.
Some examples of the extracurricular activity.
And we learned this at Star Power. So we have our fleet of 2 community service, our community vehicle trucks. Most of those were started by providing a free moving truck to the client base. I bet maybe 10, 15% of the time the truck is used, and the trucks are used, which is pretty much throughout the calendar year, is with clients. The rest is with community organizations, churches, schools, nonprofits, a ton of nonprofit organizations, special events, the orchestra. Every time the orchestra needs to move their equipment to a special location to put on a performance, they're using one of our trucks to store all of their valuable equipment overnight as they set up, et cetera.
It's make you feel really good.
It's amazing. And so, and people, I used to, one of the early on ideas was, sell advertising on your truck, or somehow try to leverage it. And every time we tried to do that, it failed. Every time we tried to see if there was a real business ROI on an investment like a truck, and the trucks are an investment, not just cash, the maintenance, the staff hours that it takes to coordinate the use of it, et cetera. Every time we tried to create a business ROI on it, it always fell flat. It's got to be totally, it's just something that we're giving to the community, and that's a big part of how we operate.
And I would contend that the reason things fall flat is they're not in alignment with who you are and what your business practices, or your ideal business practice.
And people don't, that's right. And I think that the people that use the truck, when they realize that we're not doing this to try, there's no trick, there's no, by the way, we're going to charge X or Y, or we're going to ask for X, Y, or Z, or we're going to make you feel like you've got to send your referrals, et cetera. I think if people realized that or believed that, they wouldn't think it was as clever. They wouldn't think it was as meaningful. They wouldn't think it was true to who Collins Group is. And so we just have cut all those ties and just said, listen, this is for the community. And we do some other activities throughout the year. We've got a 200th home sale a donation that we give, so $10,000, which now with inflation we're bumping that value up into the next year. So we're giving back on to local organizations that put in applications because they've got special projects that they want to accomplish. And you deal with big dollar stuff in New York City, so $10,000 isn't a lot of money, especially as you're splitting it out a bunch across maybe 5 or 10 different organizations. But I've always been impressed by how even $1,000 or $2,000 really goes a long way with someone's particular cause. And so we've always been committed, as opposed to picking one entity per year that we donate to, we want to try to have some variety, a little bit of a revolving door, so we're impacting more and more organizations throughout the course of the year.
Again, which fits into, I feel like, your culture.
Yeah, and we, culture, team building is big for us too. So we do toy drives, we do food drives. Those are opportunities for the team to come together, and we're literally taking the trucks and we're driving through a variety of neighborhoods, having organized the opportunity to pick up toys and food at people's mailboxes. And we've had fun over these 20 plus years of loading up in the back of the truck and somebody hops out and grabs the bag and throws it in, and we're all cheering and having fun. And sometimes if it's like toy drive is this time of year, sometimes it's cold. So we're huddling up and having hot chocolate and all that kind of stuff. That's all team building. It's coming back to your question is, what's the kind of person that seems to work well just in our organization is someone whose heart is in that spot.
It makes perfect sense. And that's also because you're so out there in the community, letting people know who you are. That's where the attraction comes instead of having to recruit. And that's so much easier to bring somebody.
Well, it is. And I've just never had much luck with it, honestly. I think that what I've found over these couple of decades is that the best fit are the people who maybe were already on the outside and have observed and said, that's catching my attention. I want to inquire about it. And they're yearning for what we provide, as opposed to me trying to convince someone that they need to leave what they're doing and try to come be a part of this. And I think that's where the retention stays. Because again, like I said, once it's a fit, it's a long-term fit.
So we got off on a tangent, like I always do. But you mentioned earlier that you look at real estate more as a transition rather than a transaction. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to personally say that when I made that switch in my own mindset from looking at my practice as a series of transactions mm-hmm. versus a series of how can I help people, my enjoyment increased so much. My income even went up a little, but more importantly, my enjoyment went way up.
Yeah, well, I talked to, and I love hearing that, and I feel that the same thing has happened for us. We've dubbed that looking at things through your transition lenses, like that eyeglass type an ad, is that once you do that, every challenge that you come up against, every engagement that you're having with clients, if you just look at it about how do I help these people, what's their transition, how do I put myself in their shoes, real estate is sometimes extremely joyful, and other times it's tough. Yeah. People are selling and buying for reasons that they may not necessarily be super excited about. And I think having that sensitivity and awareness about how you can be thoughtful and considerate in the words that you use, the time that you spend, the way that you carry yourself, the way that you make them feel, the way you chameleon with them, I think makes all the difference in terms of people having a better experience and frankly, probably referring you to more people like themselves down the road.
Absolutely. So getting back to those shifts that got you out of working in the business totally, you first did the buyer's agents. Give me some other positions or other steps you made to step out of the business side.
Well, as we've grown, some have been more technical and some have been more general. I think about our online presence. We've had we still operate on a Boomtown website, and we've had that since 2007. So we've amassed 100,000 person database or something like that. And one of the early on things that we realized that we needed to do, because we are a lead generation organization. So when I create an opportunity for agents to be successful, part of that is giving them opportunities to work with new prospects. And the volume that was coming at us, we needed someone that could be a little bit of a traffic cop on that. I think all agents are typically going to cherry pick, take the hottest ones, and then maybe leave the rest to a later hour or day, or maybe never get to them. That's not acceptable when you're spending money and you're driving for that lead generation. So when we created the success manager position early on, that was pretty much to traffic cop and say, okay, here all inbound new opportunities, whether it could be from listing side, buyer side, referrals, need to come through that concierge department. And we're going to make a decision about, with their readiness, who they should be assigned to, oftentimes based on geography. You've talked about, the island, there's the mainland and the other areas that we cover. So we're sensitive to geographic positioning where our agents are most specialized. So having that position was really, really important early on. And in fact, just about 2 years ago, my daughter, after she graduated from the College of Charleston, came on board with Collins Group, and she's our client care coordinator, and she has really helped elevate that whole concierge department. What that experience looks like to be onboarding with Collins Group, and what we're really up to now. And be mindful of this. It's not necessarily a shameless plug, but we're really looking to enhance our agent-to-agent referral experience. I think a lot of times agents refer business in because they know the person, okay, they'll take good care of you, and you sort of wait for maybe the referral check to show up sometime later. We've really targeted enhancing that experience. So we've got a lot
about communication.
It's all about communication. It's all about follow-up. It's all about letting them know the status of the prospect.
We're taking out the buyer now.
Correct. We're under contract
we're close
now.
To putting in an offer now.
Yeah, or maybe we need to have a sidebar. Maybe we need some insights about these people, et cetera. So that was a really important hire. As we've grown technologically, and I think back and I smile because, I was the kind of guy that would walk around with a 6-part blue folder for all of our listings, et cetera, and do the 2-hole punch and pin all that. But as we've grown technologically, thanks to a good number of the members of the team, we've got a dedicated systems manager on board that is a computer engineer and is dedicated just making sure that we're fully up to speed on all of our systems and IT, et cetera, which really enabled us during COVID. And I know we all basically went and worked remotely, but we were much more ready to do that in pretty much the switch the flip of a switch at that time, thanks to her being involved.
It's interesting. There's so many questions that keep on coming up as you talk. Let's take COVID next.
Yeah.
You have, I think, 4,000 square feet here in Hilton Head and another office in Bluffton.
Yeah, another 1,500 there. Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that the number of people coming into this large office now has diminished since COVID. And how are you addressing that? Are you trying to get people to come back in, or are you rethinking the size of your space?
Well, we're working on it. It's an evolution. Once people didn't need to go to work in their virtual operation from home, et cetera, it's kind of been hard to get that cow back in the barn, especially on the agent side, because what they were finding was efficiencies of their morning routine.
Right.
Like, do I really need to get dressed up? If I'm going to go to the office, I probably need to get dressed up. Maybe I've got a client meeting at 2:00 in the afternoon, but I've got to get ready by 7:30. That's not efficient. And the agents have really understood and felt that. So we've really understood that they've got, as independent contractors, they've really got their own methodology and what's important to them. What we found, and I think that probably throughout, this evolution through the country, is there are certain personality types that want to be around people. Others that they're okay without it. Some that want to be around people for the socialization, for the idea sharing, just to make sure that they feel part of a team. Those same people might want to stay at home because they just want to have focused work. They really don't want to be bothered in a conversation or get caught up. So it's important for us to have other types of engagement And as I said, we're working on it. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Obviously we've got a weekly sales meeting that typically we're doing because of our geographic locations and distances. Not everybody wants to travel across the bridges and fight traffic and that sort of thing. So we're doing Zoom meetings in both offices on Wednesday mornings. We fire up the Zoom and everybody's at a conference table on either side. And that way we can bring everybody together collectively, very efficient, hour and a half of time spent. We also found that being in the same space, all people being in the same space was important. And we don't have a space that really is conducive for that. So we started renting out a country club space pretty much every other month. We'll all be together in that same space. And we'll have an extended time together. It gives a little bit better chance for training and that sort of thing. So being physically proximate to each other is meaningful to kind of keep that momentum of being truly a team together.
And feeling like a member of a family or a community. It's
100%, 100%.
It's key.
We've got some technological things that we do though. So we were using Slack before COVID came along, and Slack's a great tool. It became sort of what we call our virtual hallway during COVID, where everybody would check in and the chatting would happen throughout the course of the different channels and rooms on that software. And that still happens to this day. At 8 o'clock in the morning, every staff member is keying in, whether they're working in one of the offices or working remotely, and saying, hey, I'm here, this is what I'm working on today. And around 5 o'clock, everybody's keying off on that too. So, and we've got a general channel where there's a lot of chatter. We've got our Rockstar channel where the agents can basically idea share or ask and answer questions, etc. Another thing that we've been up to that I've started just over the course of this year, we call it CGR FYI. CGR is Collins Group Realty. FYI is obvious. So every Monday morning, around 8:30 or so, assuming my morning starts right, I'll go on to BombBomb and shoot a video, and it's basically an FYI video of what happened in the past week and what's coming up this week. And also, are we celebrating somebody's birthday? Are we celebrating somebody's anniversary with the company? What were the sales that occurred over the previous week? And I feel like inside of maybe a 5-minute message, I'm able to, from that leadership position, be able to disseminate the information that I think is going to be helpful for people to start the week.
In a very palatable form.
Very, yeah. Anybody can watch it on their cell phone and knock it out, and they can comment on it if they want to. Most people just absorb it, read it, and then maybe we'll talk about it throughout the course of the week.
So let's go back to your police cop in terms of distributing leads. Where are your leads coming from?
Well, the vast majority on the buyer side of the business is coming online. Outside of what you'd expect, which you're going to have, past client business, past client referrals, sphere of influence referrals, those all start amounting to, you put all those together and maybe you're talking about 25, 30% of the business or more.
Which is pretty standard.
Which is pretty standard, I think. The online business, probably half of the buyer business is coming from our website. And
when you say from your website, is that from listings that are currently on the market or what?
Because we are began as sort of a resort second home destination, it's morphed from that. We've got a lot more primary residents than obviously we've ever had before. Most people are looking at real estate in this area from some other area. They're counting on looking at that online. So having a robust, and we really had one of the very first websites that was providing an IDX feed where people could look at real estate no matter who had it listed for sale in one single location that we could track, that we could communicate with those people. We could understand what they were favoriting and how many times they were on the site, etc. That level of engagement has sort of continued to be a really powerful tool for us.
So how is that? So back in the day when you were doing this, it was easy to get on the front page for Hilton Head Real Estate.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that easy anymore because you're competing with Zillow and Realtor.com and Homes.com. How do you still get the same traffic or comparable traffic being driven to?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and one that, again, we're working on the answer on that. Some of it, I find it ironic, is the people that we're paying the money to, which is Google for pay-per-click advertising, are the same people that are coaching us on really what we need to be doing. Of course, I always smile because they're always coaching that you should spend more money. So one of the main components is budget. How much money you really need to spend to be present. But there's been interesting moments in that evolution where it wasn't always important to be number one. For instance, we could have a better quality lead and be present more if we were positioning ourselves to be maybe the number two website that might be advertised or promoted. So
let me just interject. So,
Yeah.
so is Google pay-per-click your highest online source of leads?
Sure. Yeah, sure. That and natural, and search engine optimization, which is basically Google being the online librarian, saying, "No, what are you looking for?" Maybe you're as a consumer on Google, maybe you're not interested in a sponsored ad. Maybe you're skeptical about that being a spot. So you're looking for more of a natural response, and a natural response website would be a search engine optimization result, which is basically a result of us not just having an IDX feed, but for all this time putting rich, unique content on the site. So we're constantly putting blog posts on. We're constantly adding consumer-driven resources. We've got.
Do you know where you show up on the Google search then for organic? And it varies.
It varies entirely, and I think, as we all know, Google knows you as a consumer. So how it comes up for you is different how it comes up for me.
Right.
And are we the kind of website that you are accustomed to utilizing, or are we something that's unique and foreign? And maybe they're going to pull up a different website. So we certainly don't have time today to figure out what's the absolute solution on that. I just know that from our perspective, it is having a robust website that's user-friendly. Number one, putting a bunch of money at it on a daily spend. Number two, and adding rich content all the time, because like a Boomtown site or any of these other sites, some of the playing field has become level. Most people have one of maybe a dozen sites that are pretty popular out there. So in any given marketplace, you could have a dozen or 5 dozen people that use the same platform.
Is Boomtown still, are you finding it still be effective? Or?
Very effective for us, very effective. But, and I remember when Boomtown was adding more users in the Hilton Head and Bluffton market area, and I brought in a pair of running shoes. As you know, I'm a runner, and the team was worried because we had the only Boomtown site and it was really performing well. And I said, guys, here's the deal. I brought in a box of running shoes, and I said, here's a brand new pair of running shoes. How fast are these running? I said, well, they're not, they're just sitting there in the box. I said, they're only going to go as far as the person who is going to take the time, the attention, and the training to lace them up and go run with it and put the time and effort to actually get the results out of it. Otherwise, it's just going to sit there and it's going to be another tool that someone's going to hire on thinking it's the magic button. It's going to do the solving for them. That's not what these websites do. You've got to work on them constantly. So another team generation, another team evolution for us was our director of marketing and community relations, Ashley. We have a huge push, not just on online marketing, but everything else that might point to the website. And frankly, everything else, our outlook is our best earned new piece of business has 2 fingers pointing at them. One is, maybe it's the website. Boy, you've got a great website. The other is, we saw your community involvement. We went to one of your downsizing workshops. We know a friend that worked with you before.
By the way, great new term instead of downsizing is right sizing.
Okay, yeah. The downsizing, and I appreciate that. Because of the evolution of our market area, we're appealing to a lot of people that are actually downsizing, that they're in a home that they retired into and they spent as much time as they possibly could squeeze out until there was a health issue or something else that just made it where they didn't have the tolerance to maintain a property like that. So we're teaching to that group of local owners that are specifically falling into that category.
So let's go back to the cost. Can you approximate the cost per lead on, say, Google pay-per-click?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it depends on what's happening in the market, the demand that's occurring there.
You can give me a range.
Sure, but I mean, we've seen it where a cost per lead, meaning someone who's actually filled out a contact form, could be anywhere from a low of $10 up to $40, depending on what's happening.
And then, what do you think the conversion rate is on those type of leads? And again, I'm not going to hold it to
Yeah, well, it depends. I mean, a good conversion rate would be 5%. A good conversion would be 5%. It's tough because, and this may not be the same for everybody that's watching in their market area, but because we have sort of a buying cycle where people...
Because I'd say in the industry it's like 2%.
I think that's probably right. some of that is over time. And that's my point, is that what we're finding is that people in our market area, just like I did, I vacationed here before I moved here. People do that. So we'll visit with people that are buyer prospects year upon year upon year until they're finally in a buying position. Or you might have, so some of that ROI, some of that conversion is a years long process, as opposed to it being, well, how do we convert in this month or this particular year?
Right. On a good year, you're getting a 5% conversion rate on like your Google pay-per-clicks.
Sure.
Which is higher than the industry average of about 2%.
Yeah, that would be an amazing year. Yep.
So I'm assuming that has something to do with your traffic cop, the one that's sourcing the leads.
That's right. I mean, so part of that, as I mentioned, like pie piece, I think of like Trivial Pursuit always comes to mind. You got all the pie pieces that fill in the full circle. And that's kind of how I think about the team. And so when we have agents that are on the team that have been attracted to come on board, what they want to do is sell. They just want to sell. They don't want to do the admin work any more than they have to. They don't want to be involved in the marketing work any more than they have to. They don't want the leadership role. They don't want the management role. They just want to sell. And some of them have done some of that before, and they clearly know that they don't want to do that. So when we look at roles like the traffic cop, as you mentioned, what we understood early on was that any given agent can only handle so many leads effectively. And that's where that position came from, because the cup was running over. How do you catch that and make sure that you were incubating those leads until they are ready? You've got to filter them. So that concept that I mentioned earlier about cherry picking, some agents or some brokers and leaders say, I hate it when my agents cherry pick. I love it. Please cherry pick. In fact, that's your job. Identify the hottest leads and go sell them. We'll handle the rest. So there's really two aspects to that I see. One is a true incubation process. So we will hold the hand of these prospects that are in a longer buy cycle, that don't fall into that hot category, with company generated communications, processes, etc.
Because agents aren't going to do it.
They're not going to,
Some
and that's
will.
not their highest and best use.
Right.
As I said, the pie piece is go sell. Why are they on board? Because they want to go sell. So the marriage has got to be on that concept. Then the other part of it, the second item is management of the smaller numbers. So if we say, listen, Patrick, the target for you as an agent is to manage around about 100 leads. That's really what we think in terms of buyer leads. We think that's about what you can manage. And we've gone through that. We said, well, how many emails should you do, phone calls, how much time, showing, education, et cetera. And we boiled it all down to a 24-hour period. You got to sleep, you got to eat, you got to recreate, et cetera. And we basically said, this is what it is, and everybody bought into it. We still need to have an active involvement of monitoring, training, and guiding our agents to make sure that they are staying in front of the 100. Because it's easy to focus on, and you should focus on the 5 or 10 that are right in that. Maybe they're in town, maybe they're looking at real estate. What about the other ones? So it's sort of a 3-tier process. You've got your hot ones that the agent's never going to forget about because they're in their face. They've got the ones that they think are really close to being hot and are in their camp. And then you've got all the rest that the company is basically either generating, managing, monitoring. And as we monitor them, because the website generates and shows what people are up to, we call those bubble ups. So we're actively every day looking at, has anybody bubbled up, raised their hand, come back on the website when they haven't been on for 2 years? To us, we see those as opportunities for conversation and reconnecting them with the agent.
And how are you tracking that they came back on the website after 2 years?
Because the website does it.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it's all
The
part of
boom-
the
the boom
technology.
count.
It's all part of that technology. There's certain highlights that occur that there's renewed interest, they're back on the site, they've marked a favorite, they've shared the property, etc. Those are all hand raisers, basically, to say, you probably, if you're on top of your game, you probably need to be paying attention to these people and reaching out to them.
So it seems to me that if you are going to do a business that's high lead generation, that you really need some sort of system like Boomtown to be able to handle it.
100%. And more importantly, in my estimation experience, you need to have the human resources behind it.
Yes.
You got to have the human resources behind it. And those can't just be, and I know a lot of people, and I think it's great, a lot of people hire virtual operators and services and that sort of thing, virtual assistants, et cetera. There's just been something about me that likes having everybody that's involved in the team be in the team.
Yeah.
So if somebody asks a question and they're 5 years out from buying, but they really want a good qualified answer to where should we stay or what should I be thinking about, et cetera, and it's not in the agent's camp, this can be handled on an admin side. We've got knowledgeable people that live in the area that can answer those questions.
And I also, we were talking about earlier, if you're hiring virtual assistants, and especially if the virtual assistants in the Philippines or whatever, they're never going to feel like they're a part of the team. They're never going to have that buy-in to being part of the family.
And I'm sure that there's folks watching that would probably say, no, that's not the case. We've trained them up. They've got their scripts, their dialogues, et cetera. I don't know. Maybe I'm old school that way. I just like having real people that are truly part of the team to capture these opportunities. Once we've captured them, and with our continuity system and drip campaigns and our communication process that we do from a company global perspective, we've got pretty good retention. Because there's a lot you mentioned about like Zillow and all the other sites. There's a lot of distractions out there. I mean, consumers that are looking at real estate know they've got a ton of choices. Why should they stay with us? We've got to compel them to stay with us. Some of that's human touch.
So I'm assuming you've looked at Zillow leads and decided not to go in that direction.
That's right. Yeah, we basically invested in our own process.
Which I love.
Well, it's worked for us.
All I hear about people is complaining about Zillow, except for Lilly in Montalto. She knocks them out of the ballpark.
Well, and I think I'm not educated enough to understand that process, but it feels like it's narrowed, and it also feels like it's gotten more expensive. But I think that equation works. I think that equation works. It just is not one that we got involved in early on, or that we've moved through.
And that's one of the purposes of this series. There's so many ways to skin a cat. There's so many ways to be successful in real estate. And we've just mentioned how you can do high leads, you can do community service, there's whatever fits your personality.
The thing for me on that, and I'm sure that this is similar for others, is that I just like owning what we do. And I like what we do being unique from our competitors. We are aped a lot. A lot of times people look and follow what we do. And I know that that's an industry standard. We're all in here, we're all trying to learn from each other, et cetera. But we're always therefore trying to innovate and stay a little bit separated from at least from our local competition. It's important.
So that leads to an interesting question. What do you feel you do better than just about anybody else in your marketplace?
Our tagline is, we got two really. One is structured to serve, and the other is results. The first one means more, I think. That pie piece, there's just nothing, there's no local entity, team, firm, company that I'm aware of that can replicate the level of service that we can deliver down to a lot of the nitty-gritty details. And I realize, even just sitting here and saying that, well, Chip, that sounds like you're in the living room. That sounds like pitch. Like, okay, well, you're nice pitch. But when you review the testimonials, when you review the feedback, when you get the referrals, when you're talking to people and they say that I've done a dozen real estate transactions, I've never had one that felt like this, then we know we're on the right track. And it's hard to describe, certainly in the time we have, about exactly what that looks like, except that when you've got upwards of 30 people working full time, sometimes exhaustively, there's something going on there that's going to be different than your typical real estate agent that's trying to do jack of all trades.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Talk to me about leadership.
Yeah. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I don't think that I had the confidence or courage as much a couple of decades ago, but I've settled into it, and I think some of that had to do with people telling me that I was a good leader. I'm an Ohio guy like Rob. I come from humble orientation.
I just wanted to check that Ohio is the highest rate of serial killers in the world.
Wow.
I said, wait a minute. Wait a minute. First of all, you're not going to speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
Okay, well, I'm not in Unsolved Mysteries apparently too.
And Unsolved Mysteries, the highest rate
That's not
of
me.
Unsolved
But
Mysteries.
humility, I think, is in the mix in the Midwest. And so it took me a long time for people to say, you're a good leader. Like what you're doing is working. It's meaningful to me, etc. And hearing that not only from outside, but most importantly inside. So it's like, okay, well then what I'm doing innately seems to be working. I guess I've got a knack for it. And as I continued to age in my career, there's a book, From Strength to Strength. And I don't know if you've read that book, but it's a really powerful message, From Strength to Strength. And it's a message that basically says there's a point in your career where if you don't jump off of your trajectory of being a practitioner, it's going to start curving downwards. You're not going to be able to keep pace. You're not going to be able to innovate the way that you could when you were in the earlier stages of it. But there's another trajectory that you can jump onto that basically gives you the opportunity to be successful, but in another way. And that has to do with coaching, training, encouraging. And I really feel like I've come into that transition now. That a lot of what
you enjoy it, I think.
And I enjoy it just that much more, honestly, because nothing to me means more than creating an environment for success and opportunity and results for all my team, my staff members and my agents.
Which ties into your MBTI again.
As you say, well, you're the one that studied it, but I'm just the one that took it. But I think that's true, and so for me, it's super important, and I find value in that. So every day I'm looking for opportunities to train, to coach, to be a deal doctor. Hey Patrick, you're having a little trouble with this deal.
It's fun being a deal doctor.
Being a deal doctor is fun, because and I always laugh because I know I'm doing a good job because we'll have that consult, we'll have a conversation, hallway meeting, etc. Say, here's my ideas, here's my thoughts, etc. And the next thing I know, I'll see an email come in that the contract is pending and they had a successful deal. And I always give the team a hard time, like, you couldn't have come back and just said, hey, how about a high five?
Earlier.
Right, yeah. So that's a process that I really enjoy. And I enjoy seeing the team evolve and grow and seeing staff members evolve and grow and their opportunities in the business too. And there's great longevity there. So those are things that I really get jazzed up about every day.
It makes perfect sense to me. Do you have a morning ritual?
I do.
Besides returning all the texts I send you at 5 a.m. in the morning.
and for the record, I've been up for an hour already, as I'd shared with you. I become an early to bed, early to rise kind of guy. Increasingly, in fact,
you're getting older, Chad.
I am. Well, and I'm trying to expand how much time I actually sleep. So I'm hitting the melatonin at night to make sure I can actually maybe get 7 hours versus 6 hours. But I'm a get up, have coffee early, have that quiet time, kind of see what happened overnight. Play my New York Times puzzle games with my friends and teammates and that sort of thing. And I'm a workout guy. Every day I've got to get out and get at least an hour worth of exercise on the bike, on the run, some other kind of activity to kind of get that blood flowing. Playing pickleball, we play that at night, which is really fun. But that's really important for me. And then kind of getting myself squared away and ready, because at 8 o'clock, this group is all guns. They just rock and roll. They're a hardworking group, and if I'm not present at 8 o'clock, I feel guilty. I'm not comfortable being the one who's not at work, who's not at the helm. So the team knows that, and we rock and roll throughout the day.
So let's change the subject. Marketing.
Good. Yeah.
What do you guys do?
It's a variety of things. I think that the in-person things I mentioned earlier, where we're doing our home seller workshop, our downsizing workshop, those things fall in the marketing realm and probably have the most direct ROI. Anytime we're running those events, we're getting people that engage with us and are looking to perhaps do some kind of business with us in short order. Print advertising, it feels like, is a brand thing for us. People don't respond, especially since a lot of our buyer audience, not entirely by any means, but a lot of our buyer audience, as I mentioned, is out of area and online. Print advertising is something we're doing to perpetuate the brand, what we stand for in the community, so people know to be thinking about us. Direct mail is a big piece for us, where we're appealing to homeowners, letting them know what we're involved in. In fact, Jimmy Burgess just did a piece that landed yesterday. I did a YouTube video on that. So if you want to look up Jimmy Burgess and look at his YouTube video on direct mail, you'll hear more about what we're doing, some pieces on that. He just put that out, and that'll come out on Inman later this week too. So that's a big part of it. The online spend is hugely important for us. And a lot of the other stuff we look at globally from marketing, I think, as I mentioned, so much of what drives our business is repeat business, sphere of influence, those 2 or maybe 3 fingers pointing at us. And so that community involvement it's priceless. You know, you may not see the 1-to-1 ratio on that sort of thing, but you know that that's one of the fingers that's pointing at us. So we kind of bulk that into our marketing budget too.
And it fits your heart and your mindset too.
It does, and it works. You know, I mean, we know this, that if you don't have your reputation in this business, you don't have anything. And for 23 years, we've been working diligently on it. So a lot of what we need to do is just keep perpetuating what that reputation is in our marketing.
Your feelings about social media?
Social media is it's a game we got to play. Sometimes I get frustrated, and Ashley tells me not to be frustrated, but I'll look at a post and see very minimal engagement on it, and then she'll remind myself, listen, just because there was an engagement on it doesn't mean that there isn't viewership on it, that it's not getting an impression, that someone is not seeing it. Where we've had a lot of fun, I think, and effectiveness in the social media realm, if you'll allow it, is on YouTube with our video series. You know, every other week we're sitting in front of a camera talking about maybe a quick update on what's going on with the market. Here's the stats, and then here's something to think about. Maybe here's a tip for your home, or here's a tip for buyer strategy when you're making offers, or here's the evolution of the market, or here's what typically happens this time of year, or here's something to be thinking about in the new year. We love putting those videos together because they're educational, and you know, marketing results sometimes aren't always about that direct metric ROI, like, well, did that lead to a transaction? For me, I hear more and more people say, oh, I watch your videos all the time. In fact, we had our pie day for our Clients for Life. So we gave out pushing towards 400 pies last week on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And probably,
how did they make the list? Because I know you have more than 400 clients.
They make the list because they signed up, because they're here. It would be 1,000 if it could be. It's just that only so many people are present, interested, and available to come through and pick that up. But probably the most common comment that I heard as I lean in the window and say hello to everybody is, I see your videos all the time. I watch your videos, and I was like, well, you actually watch like a 9-minute video? And they're like, yeah, it's really educational. So we try to have fun and keep those current. And I would say that.
What are some topics you're doing on those videos?
We cover everything. What's interesting is, and it's a little bit, it's sort of like what you do here is, you're trying to appeal to a somewhat of a niched audience, but some broadness within it. So we're making sure that we've got messages that are equally interesting to a buyer and to a seller, to existing homeowners, to someone who's thinking about coming into the market, and someone who's not interested in being in the market for 10 years. There's a little bit of an art to that. So every time we're putting them together, and they're all on our Collins Group Realty page. If anybody wants to see our YouTube page and kind of scroll through them, we're constantly trying to come up with something that's fresh and unique, that isn't just rote, boring stuff that people would basically pass on.
Chip, if you were speaking with a brand new agent, not necessarily in your market, what were the 3 things that you would tell the agent that you think is the most important things for them to do to be successful?
From what I've seen, the first would be determining what your systems need to be that work for you. You know, is that having one-on-one coffee with your sphere of influence? Is that writing handwritten notes, things that don't cost a lot of money, but give you an opportunity to leverage those relationships? Whatever that system is for building and enhancing your personal relationships, figure out that system and then follow the system. I so many times see people fall off that, and it's just a function of commitment. I think we all know that success comes from repetition of doing the things that most people don't want to do. The second is knowing your inventory. I think that increasingly what I find is that people expect a realtor to somehow miraculously, because the consumer knows through Zillow and other websites, all about all the homes that are on the market. Somehow they expect that a real estate agent should know everything about every house that's on them. Well, of course, you know that house. It's there in 125 Main Street. It's listed for XYZ, and you've probably been through it. If you sit there and you don't have any knowledge to it, I think it falls flat, especially for the consumer that's looking for that immediate gratification. And then I think thirdly is whether you're in a team or you're in a company that's cooperative more than competitive, immerse yourself in experience. Spend time talking to people that have been through this road before. You know, I've seen a lot of memes and a lot of posts on Facebook about, you know, how this was kind of more of a challenging year, certainly more challenging than COVID was for a lot of agents. And there's experienced agents that are saying, well, you know, I've basically been through this. I know what it feels like to have a slower market. I think it's important to get that perspective from people that have been there and done that. And you can only get that by hanging out with people that have been in the business for a long time.
Makes sense. I think that's really good advice. Chip, what brings you joy?
What brings me joy, I think ultimately, as I shared before, in the company is seeing people achieve results. And that's not necessarily about us being number 1 or number 10 or whatever that is. The numbers are going to be what the numbers are going to be. But what I take great pride in and satisfaction in is having set up an environment, a platform for people to be successful where they understand how we operate and how it benefits them, and they leverage that, and the system is humming. The system's humming. The team's truly working. And that's usually where I'm happiest. And I think maybe you know that saying, but a parent is only as happy as their saddest kid. And I know that's not a great analogy, but it's kind of the way I feel inside the organization is I'm only as happy as the person who's struggling. And how do I bring them up? And my greatest joy moments in business are when I feel like I've done a mental accounting of everybody in my group and I see a smile or success or at least no real challenges present in their world, then I'm happy in that moment.
And then Daddy has done well.
Daddy's done well, and yet I know that tomorrow it might change, you know, and that's where the challenge comes from.
What brings you joy outside of work?
You know, I'm super blessed. I know you've had the occasion to meet Carrie, and she's just an amazing wife and partner.
I met at least one of your daughters years and years ago.
Yeah, so those girls have grown. We were talking last night around the fireside, and you were amazed that one is married, the one that Martha Preston that works for me, and Sally lives up in your neck of the woods up in New York City. And so, you know, as a dad, I love watching the kids grow and move into something where they're picking on their own self-importance, self-starting. They're achieving things in their own way. That's meaningful to me. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed with a really great family, and we're the core four, and we've got a really great, you know, Hilton Head. A lot of people think of that as golf and beach and tennis and that sort of stuff, but having been here for well over 30 years, it's a special place, and we've met some amazing.
I'm shocked at how beautiful it is.
It's beautiful, and it's, you know, it's this will sound cheesy, but it's beautiful inside. The people that are here, we're blessed with amazing clients. I mean, one after the next, you're telling people like these are the nicest people you'd ever want to meet, because that's sort of who's drawn to this area, and we've got a really great friend base that we've enjoyed, and it's home. So this is Hilton Head, the Bluffton area. It all brings me joy. Always has been.
From the outside, it appears you and Carrie have a wonderful life.
We're blessed, that's for sure. I appreciate your comment on that.
Chip, thank you. This was really a joy. It was fun spending time with you, and really, I had no idea that it was this wonderful here. You run a really excellent company, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
Well, it's been a joy, and I tell you, it's been a joy having you come into my home after all these years back when you first started your Rev conference, and you invited everybody to come up into your apartment in New York City, right? And there was a lot of people in a little space, but it was meaningful to be invited into somebody's home. And so we're really glad, Carrie and I both are really glad to invite you in, and we're super glad to invite you here at Collins Group Realty and get a flavor for who we are. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Chip. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of America's Top Agents. If so, please like and subscribe and comment below about what you're going to take away for yourself from this episode. In the meantime, if I can help you with your New York City or Hudson Valley real estate needs or are interested in coaching, please contact me. Next month, we'll interview Brenda Wade from Tampa, Florida. Until then.